The sun dipped below the horizon. Shadows grew long and twisted. A chill wind whispered through the trees, rustling leaves like brittle bones. Night was coming. It was the kind of night that sent shivers down your spine. The kind of night that made you want to stay inside, huddled under the covers. But for some, the darkness held an irresistible allure. Deep in the woods, hidden amongst the trees, stood an old, abandoned cabin. Its windows were boarded up, its door creaking in the wind. Locals whispered tales of the cabin, tales of strange lights and eerie sounds, tales of people who ventured inside and were never seen again. One chilly evening, two friends, Jake and Emily, decided to see for themselves if the stories were true. They had heard the whispers, but they dismissed them as mere superstition. They would soon learn the truth. As they approached the cabin, the wind seemed to pick up, howling through the trees like a banshee. The hair on the back of Jake's neck stood on end. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Emily, ever the adventurer, pushed open the creaking door. Inside, the cabin was dark and dusty, cobwebs hanging from every corner. But then, Jake saw it. A faint glimmer of light coming from the back of the cabin. Curiosity getting the better of them, Jake and Emily slowly made their way towards the light. The hallway was eerily silent, the only sound being their own footsteps echoing off the walls. Each step they took seemed to amplify the sense of dread that hung in the air. They exchanged nervous glances, but neither spoke a word, as if afraid that breaking the silence would awaken something lurking in the shadows. It was coming from a small, dusty mirror hanging on the far wall. The mirror looked ancient, its frame covered in cobwebs and dust. It seemed out of place, almost as if it had been waiting for them. The light emanating from it was faint, but it had an almost hypnotic quality, drawing them closer with each passing second. As they got closer, they noticed something strange. The air around the mirror felt colder, and a chill ran down their spines. They could see their breath misting in the air, despite the warmth of the room. The closer they got, the more they felt an inexplicable sense of foreboding, as if the mirror was a portal to another world. The reflection in the mirror, it wasn't them. Instead of their own faces, they saw a dark, twisted version of themselves staring back. The figures in the mirror moved independently, their eyes filled with malice and hatred. It was as if the mirror was showing them a glimpse of their darkest fears and desires. It was two grotesque figures, their skin pale and decayed, their eyes glowing red in the darkness. The figures seemed to be alive, their movements slow and deliberate. They reached out towards Jake and Emily, their bony fingers scraping against the glass. The sound was like nails on a chalkboard, sending shivers down their spines. Jake and Emily gasped in horror, stumbling backward. Their hearts pounded in their chests, and they could feel the adrenaline coursing through their veins. They wanted to run, to escape the nightmare that was unfolding before their eyes, but their legs felt like lead. They were rooted to the spot, unable to tear their gaze away from the horrifying scene in the mirror. But it was too late. The figures in the mirror had already ensnared them in their grasp. Jake and Emily's faces were frozen in fear, their eyes wide with terror. They could feel the cold, clammy hands of the figures wrapping around their throats, squeezing the life out of them. The figures in the mirror reached out, their bony fingers wrapping around Jake and Emily's throats. The grip was icy and unrelenting, and they could feel their strength ebbing away. They struggled to break free, but it was no use. The mirror had claimed them, and there was no escape from its twisted reflection. Section 5. Halloween night descends. A blanket of darkness fell upon Hallow Heights. The air, crisp and cool, carried the sweet scent of decaying leaves and the promise of mischief. Children transformed into ghouls and goblins flitted from house to house, their laughter echoing through the quiet streets. On this night, the line between reality and fantasy blurred, and even the most ordinary neighborhood could take on a sinister air. Section 6. The Costume Party. 10-year-old Michael and his best friend Lisa were on a mission to collect the most candy. The air was filled with the scent of autumn leaves and the sound of children's laughter. The streets were alive with the vibrant colors of costumes and the glow of jack-o'-lanterns. Michael, dressed as a vampire with fake blood dripping from his chin, felt invincible. His cape fluttered behind him as he ran from house to house, his plastic fangs gleaming in the moonlight. He had spent weeks perfecting his costume, making sure every detail was just right. Lisa, a shimmery fairy princess, skipped beside him, her laughter echoing in the night. Her wings sparkled under the streetlights, and her wand twinkled with every step. She had a basket full of candy, but her eyes were set on the grand prize, the full-size candy bars from the old man's house. They were on their way to the biggest party of the night, hosted by the mysterious old man who lived at the end of the street. The house was legendary among the neighborhood kids, not just for the candy, but for the spooky decorations and the eerie stories that surrounded it. He was known for giving out full-size candy bars, but no one had ever seen him outside his house. The house itself was a character in the neighborhood, with its creaky gates, overgrown garden, and the faint sound of organ music that seemed to play from nowhere. As Michael and Lisa approached, their excitement grew. They could see the lights flickering inside, casting strange shadows on the windows. The air was thick with anticipation, and they knew this Halloween night would be one to remember. Section 7. The Mysterious House on the Hill. As they approached the old man's house, a chill ran down Michael's spine. The house loomed over them, its silhouette stark against the moonlit sky. Cobwebs draped the porch like macabre decorations, and the flickering light from a single jack-o'-lantern cast eerie shadows. Lisa, sensing Michael's unease, squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Don't be scared, Michael, it's just an old house." But her words did little to calm his growing fear. Section 8. A Trick, Not a Treat. The old man answered the door with a creaking groan. His face, hidden in the shadows, was unreadable. He held out a bowl filled with what looked like candy bars. Michael and Lisa chimed, their voices trembling slightly. Trick or treat. Michael reached into the bowl, his fingers closing around a cold, hard object. He pulled it out. It wasn't a candy bar. It was a human finger, pale and lifeless. Section 9. The screams echo in the night. Michael screamed, dropping the finger in horror. Lisa screamed too, backing away from the door. The old man's face contorted into a grotesque grin, revealing rows of sharp, pointed teeth. Before Michael or Lisa could react, the old man lunged, grabbing Lisa's arm in a vice-like grip. "You're not going anywhere," he rasped, his voice like nails on a chalkboard. Section 10. Vanishing Act. Michael, paralyzed with fear, watched in horror as the old man dragged Lisa into the house. The door slammed shut behind them, plunging Michael into darkness. He could hear Lisa's muffled screams, each one sending chills down his spine. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the screaming stopped. Michael was alone. He ran, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't look back. He didn't dare to see if the old man was following him. Section 11. The Final House. Michael ran until he reached the end of the street, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He turned to look back, but the old man's house was gone. In its place stood a normal-looking house, its windows glowing warmly in the night. Had he imagined the whole thing? Had the darkness played tricks on his mind? He didn't know. All he knew was that he wanted to go home. Section 12. Unmasking Evil. On a night when the moon hung low and full, casting an eerie glow over the landscape, the air was thick with an unsettling silence. The haunted house stood ominously, its windows like dark, soulless eyes watching over the forest path that led to its door. As Michael turned to leave the haunted house, a chill ran down his spine. He noticed something lying on the ground, partially hidden by the fallen leaves and shadows. The forest seemed to hold its breath as he bent down to take a closer look. It was Lisa's fairy princess crown, its plastic jewels shimmering in the moonlight. The sight of it brought back a flood of memories, her laughter, her innocent joy, and the way she had twirled around in her princess dress just hours before. He picked it up, his heart sinking with a heavy realization. The crown felt cold in his hands, a stark contrast to the warmth of Lisa's presence that now seemed so far away. He knew then that it wasn't a dream. The events of the night were all too real, and the weight of that truth pressed down on him like a suffocating fog. The old man was real. His sinister presence had been more than just a figment of Michael's imagination, and Lisa was gone, taken by the shadows that lurked in the corners of the night. Michael clutched the crown tightly to his chest, a single tear rolling down his cheek. The weight of his failure to protect her was almost unbearable, and the crown seemed to mock him with its fragile beauty. He knew that he would never forget this Halloween night. The night that had started with innocent fun and laughter had turned into a nightmare that would haunt him forever. The night he learned that sometimes the scariest monsters wear the friendliest masks. The old man's seemingly kind demeanor had been a facade, hiding the true horror beneath. Michael vowed to uncover the truth and bring Lisa back, no matter the cost. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but he was determined to face it head-on. The memory of Lisa's smile would be his guiding light in the darkness.